My name is David Mercer. I am 57 years old. For 23 years, I worked as a construction foreman in Millbrook, Virginia. I coached Little League on weekends, called my mother every Thursday evening, and spent Sunday afternoons doing what men like me have always done: keeping things running, keeping things together, keeping the appearance of control that I had mistaken for most of my adult life for actual strength. On October 14th, I lay completely paralyzed in my bedroom. I could not move a single finger. I could not call out. I could not reach the buzzer on the nightstand 2 feet from my hand. And somewhere in the house, I heard the front door open and heavy footsteps moving down the hallway toward my room. What I believed was happening in those minutes and what was actually happening were two entirely different things. The distance between those two realities is what this account is about. I grew up in Millbrook, Virginia, a town of roughly 4,000 people. My father repaired engines. My mother shelved books at the public library. We were not wealthy, but the household operated on a clear and unspoken principle. Problems were solved, not discussed. Complaints were a form of weakness, and weakness was not tolerated. That ethic shaped the man I became, for better and for worse. And mostly, as it turned out, for worse. I met Carol at a county fair when I was 22 years old. She was laughing at something her friend had said, and I walked over and introduced myself. We married 2 years later. Our son Nathan was born when I was 26. My work was physical and concrete in the most literal sense. I built bridges, office buildings, parking structures. At the end of a shift, I could point at something that had not existed that morning and confirm that it now did. Not everyone gets to measure their days that way, and I understood that it was a privilege, even when the work was hard. For 2 decades, I was capable in the way that I valued most: physically capable, reliably present, the kind of man others called when something needed doing. I did not ask for help. Asking for help meant acknowledging limitation, and I had been conditioned since childhood to treat limitation as failure. The first symptoms appeared when I was 53, a tingling in my left hand, occasional weakness in my legs after long shifts. I told myself it was fatigue, that I was getting older, that I needed to pace myself. I waited 8 months before seeing a doctor. 8 months during which Carol watched and said nothing, because she knew me well enough to know that pressing would only push me further in the wrong direction. The diagnosis arrived quickly once I finally went. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. The neurologist explained the mechanism clearly: motor neuron degeneration, progressive muscle failure, no available cure. I sat in his office in my work clothes, boots still carrying dirt from the job site, and I heard every word. I processed almost none of it. I drove home in my 2019 Ford F250, pulled into the driveway and sat there for 45 minutes before going inside. I did not tell Carol that night. I told myself I needed time. The more accurate explanation was that I did not know how to exist, even for a single evening, as the person in the room who needed help, rather than the one providing it. Over the following 2 years, I informed the people who needed to know. Carol first. She stood at the kitchen counter and cried in the way people cry when they are trying very hard not to. Her shoulders contracted, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. And then she straightened, wiped her face, and asked what we needed to do next. That was Carol's way. It had always been Carol's way. Nathan was 28 when I told him. He had moved to Portland, Oregon the previous year to work in software development. He was building mobile applications, dating a woman named Lily, building the kind of life that belongs to people who have not yet had to reckon with serious loss. When I called him, there was a long silence after I finished speaking. Then he said he was coming home. I told him he did not have to do that. He said he understood, and that he was coming anyway. He moved back to Millbrook within 3 weeks. He gave up his apartment and his position in Portland, secured remote work with a technology company in Richmond, and set up a workspace in the guest room. Lily followed him east several months later. For a period, the arrangement worked well. We had dinner together most evenings. Carol made beef stew on Sundays. Nathan and I watched football on Friday nights, which we had not done together since he was a teenager. We argued about quarterbacks and told old stories and occasionally sat without talking, and in those silences I recognized that the disease had, in a way I had not anticipated, returned something I had allowed to slip away: time and the willingness to simply occupy it. ALS does not accommodate that kind of reflection for long. By 56, I was walking with a cane. Within the following spring, I was using a wheelchair on my worst days. My speech slowed noticeably. Breathing required conscious effort in a way it never had before. In March of my 57th year, Carol was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. She underwent treatment with the same quiet determination she had brought to everything else. By August, she was spending more time in the hospital than at home. Nathan was managing both of us, scheduling medications, driving Carol to her chemotherapy appointments in Richmond, helping me with tasks I could no longer complete independently, maintaining the house, and continuing his remote work. He did all of this without complaint, and without making either of us feel that we had become a burden, which is a considerably harder thing to accomplish than it might sound. The exhaustion was visible in him, not the ordinary kind that comes from interrupted sleep, but the deeper kind that accumulates in people who have been carrying weight for a long time, without setting it down. I noticed it, and said nothing, because I did not know what to say, and because even then, I could not fully release the habit of framing my own need as something that should not exist. By early October, I had lost all function in my legs and most function in my left arm. My right hand retained limited movement, enough to press the buttons on a television remote, nothing more. Speaking required significant effort, and I had learned to economize, to decide in advance which words were worth spending. Carol had been moved to a care facility in Richmond, 40 minutes from the house. Nathan drove to visit her every Tuesday and Thursday. On the days he remained in Millbrook, he arranged my room before beginning his workday. Water on the nightstand, the window shades positioned so the light came through without direct glare on the television, a baby monitor on the dresser, and a small wireless buzzer on the nightstand that connected to an alert on his phone. October 14th was a Wednesday. That morning, Nathan mentioned he had a video call with his development team scheduled for the afternoon and might be occupied for 1 to 2 hours. He set up the room as usual, and before heading to his office down the hall, he told me to press the buzzer if anything came up. I told him I would be fine, which was the same answer I always gave. I watched a nature documentary for a while, something about Alaska, wolves, and glaciers, and fell asleep sometime before 3 in the afternoon. When I woke, something was different. The sensation was not pain exactly. It was more accurately described as an absence. Something that should have been functioning had stopped or had changed in a way I could not immediately identify. My chest felt wrong. My right hand, which had been my last reliable limb, did not respond when I tried to move it. I attempted to reach the buzzer on the nightstand. My arm did not move, neither did my legs, my other arm, or my head. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, a ceiling I had painted myself 15 years earlier on a weekend in July, and I listened to my own breathing and assessed my options. I had none. I tried to call out for Nathan. What came out was a breath, not a voice. It would not have carried to the hallway. I lay there for what I estimated was close to 10 minutes, though it registered as considerably longer. I thought about Carol in the facility in Richmond and hoped someone was with her. I thought about Nathan and the things I had meant to say to him over the years and had not. I thought about the Millbrook Bridge, the Hargrove office complex, the gymnasium at the high school. I thought about whether this was how it was going to end. Alone in a room, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to do anything except wait for whatever was coming next. And then I heard the front door open, not Nathan's office door, the front door, the heavy oak door that opened onto the porch, the one with the hinges I had never oiled. I heard the lock turn, heard those hinges, heard the door close, and then footsteps on the hardwood floor of the hallway. They were not Nathan's footsteps. Nathan had walked lightly since childhood, his weight shifting forward onto his heels in a particular way I would have recognized anywhere. These steps were heavier, more deliberate, the footsteps of a larger person moving with intention. I could not move. I could not press the buzzer. I could not make a sound that would carry beyond the room. Someone was in the house, and I was entirely without options. The footsteps continued down the hall. My bedroom door, which Nathan always left partially open, swung wider. A figure stood in the doorway, male, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket. The afternoon light came from behind him, which put his face in shadow. He stood still for a moment, looking at me. Then he stepped into the room. As he leaned toward me, he spoke in a low voice, the register someone uses when they do not want to be overheard. He said, "Make it look natural. Don't mess this up." I will describe as accurately as I can what passed through my mind in that moment. Paralyzed in bed, with a stranger leaning over me and using that specific phrase, my thoughts moved immediately in one direction. I thought about the life insurance policy I held through MetLife. $300,000, with Nathan as the sole beneficiary. I thought about conversations I could not clearly remember, things Nathan might have said on calls I had half heard through medication. I reached a conclusion that, given the available information and my inability to act on any of it, arrived with a strange and terrible calm. I believed my son had sent someone to the house to kill me. And in the same moment, I understood, or told myself I understood, why he might have done it. The man reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. What he removed was a blood pressure cuff. He wrapped it around my left arm. He pressed a stethoscope to my chest. He worked with the practiced efficiency of someone who performs these tasks routinely and without hesitation. He was a nurse. His name, as I learned within the next several minutes, was Marcus Webb. He was a home health aide employed by Lighthouse Home Health Services, a care agency based in Richmond. Nathan had arranged his involvement through that agency without telling me and had provided him with a key to the front door specifically for circumstances like this one. Circumstances in which I might require immediate medical assessment and Nathan could not be available. Marcus told me what had happened. My vitals had dropped approximately 20 minutes earlier. A monitoring application connected to my medical devices had flagged the change and sent an alert to Nathan's phone. Nathan had been on a work call he could not immediately leave, so he had contacted Marcus directly and asked him to come to the house and check on me. Marcus had done exactly that. "Mr. Mercer," he said, adjusting the monitor, "your blood pressure is low, but it's stabilizing. We're going to get you through this." I looked at him and said nothing because I could not speak. Tears ran from the corners of my eyes into my ears, which is what happens when you cry lying flat on your back and cannot raise a hand to your face. What I had constructed in the minutes before Marcus walked into that room was the worst possible version of my son. The version that had calculated cost and made a decision. I had believed it, fully and without question, because I was alone and terrified, and incapable of any other action. What Nathan had actually said on the phone to Marcus was this: "Make it look natural. I don't want Dad to feel like I arranged around him. Don't make it a big thing. Just go in, check his vitals, make sure he's okay." He had arranged Marcus's involvement in secret because he knew me well enough to know that I would refuse it if asked directly. He knew I would spend an hour insisting I did not need a stranger coming into the house. He knew I would frame the refusal as reasonable and practical, the same way I had framed every refusal in my life, because I had spent 57 years treating my own need as something to be minimized and managed and kept from view. He arranged it in secret because arguing with me about it would have been pointless, and because he needed to know I would be safe. Marcus Webb came to the house twice a week for the following 3 months. He was originally from Baltimore and had worked as a nurse for 16 years before transitioning to home care. He had a daughter in middle school named Priya. He talked to me the way people talk to other people, not to patients, not to problems. And on the days when speaking was too difficult, he sat in the chair by the window and read, and was comfortable in the silence. Carol died on December 3rd at 6:47 in the morning, with Nathan holding her hand. I was not there. I could not be there. Nathan called me from her room and held the phone to her ear, and I said the things I had meant to say for years, without the filtering, without the performance of self-sufficiency that had cost me so many true words over so many years. Whether she heard me, I cannot confirm. The medical staff said it was likely she could, even at that stage. I am telling this from my living room in Millbrook, Virginia. Nathan works in the kitchen on the other side of the wall. Lily is here on weekends. Marcus comes on Thursday afternoons. The disease continues to progress. There is no version of this account in which it does not. What the afternoon of October 14th clarified, permanently and without room for revision, was something I had spent the better part of 6 decades avoiding. The strongest thing I did in my life was not build a bridge. It was not working through injury, or carrying something heavy, or refusing to ask for help. The strongest thing I did was arrive, late and reluctantly, at the understanding that accepting care is not the same as losing ground. That my son, raised to be capable and steady, looked at a situation that was beyond his capacity to manage alone and made a quiet, practical decision to ensure I would not be left without help. He left the door open for a stranger. That stranger came in and confirmed I was still alive. I do not know how much time remains. Some days are harder than others. Some mornings the reasons have to be located rather than assumed. And then I hear Nathan in the kitchen, or I see the light coming through the bedroom windows, or I remember Carol's laugh, and I find them. There are always reasons. I know that now. If you are the person in your household who holds things together, the one who does not ask, does not admit, does not allow others to see the difficulty, I am not in a position to tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I know from my own experience. I spent most of my life treating need as failure. I was wrong about that. The evidence of how wrong I was is in the fact that I am still here, in a room my son made safe, being cared for by a man I once believed had come to harm me. Leave the door open. You may not know what is coming through it. But sometimes, when you are lying in the dark, and you cannot move and you cannot call out, what comes through is exactly what you needed, and you would not have allowed it in any other way.